Hey, what's going on? This is Sarah Lee Day, and you're watching Dubsado Tidbits, the things you need to know about Dubsado delivered in bite-sized pieces. Last time we introduced the workflow templates, and today we're going to start taking a look at what it takes to set up a workflow. So from the left-hand side, you go to Templates and Workflow. Let's go ahead and add a new workflow. We're going to give it a name of Test Workflow just for now, and click Next Step. Now, the first option that you have here is payment schedule. This is optional, but if you want to set up a workflow to trigger off of a scheduled payment being made, then you would want to add that payment schedule directly to the workflow. So we could add our for payments schedule in here, and that'll give us the option to actually trigger an action based off of one of those payments being made. If you're not wanting to do that, then I recommend not adding a payment schedule here since it is optional, but that is something that you would want to keep in mind as you're setting up and deciding what things you're wanting to trigger off of. The first thing you're going to do here then is to add an action. Now, an action is what you actually want the workflow to do. So when it gets to this step, what is the thing that needs to happen? We have change project status. So if you remember back in an earlier episode, we talked about project statuses and how you can set that up on the project's dashboard. So you've got your lead side, you've got your job side, and you can actually have the workflow move projects from bucket to bucket as they flow through your sales process and onboarding process. And that way it keeps you organized and you don't have to even mess with it. You don't have to do anything with it. It will just go through your workflow, and as things happen in your workflow, it can change that project status. Next is add tag. So if you have different ways that you wanted to filter and sort your project and you wanted to add tags, you could have them added directly from the workflow. Depending on how you have it set up, that could be triggering off of a proposal that's sent, a lead capture that's completed, whatever it is that's starting your workflows, you can actually tag your clients and your projects through the workflow. Send email. This is a very commonly used workflow action, and that's just what it says. It's sending an email. That's either a canned email, or you can actually customize the email within the actual workflow itself to send a specific email. Send form is also a common action that's used. It's like send email, but it's actually including a button that goes to a form. So it could be the proposal or a contract or a questionnaire. Any kind of form that you have in Dubsado, you can send it through the workflow using this send form action. And you want to make sure that if you are sending a form that you use send form instead of just send email, because this is actually going to give you the options of selecting which form to send, whereas an email is just going to have the option to send which email. Create to do. So this is actually going to create a task for you or someone on your team in Dubsado that you would check off and mark as complete or incomplete. And you can also set that up to send you or whoever it's assigned to a reminder email about that task. I use these to-do items a lot for my clients setting up in their workflows just for different reasons, different things they need to look at, different tasks that they need to do before moving on in the workflow. It could be setting something up for the client or taking a look at something the client submitted or any kind of reminder for any task that needs to be done within the workflow. Especially one that will prevent other actions from occurring. You can set that up with a to-do item, and that'll actually pause the workflow for you to do that action before continuing on. Send contract, similar to the send form, but this one is specifically for sending just contracts. Send primary invoice. So if you have an invoice and you're wanting to send that invoice through the workflow, then you would just use this send primary invoice action. Create an invoice. If an invoice is not yet created, then you can set up a workflow action to create that invoice based on some of the previous action or trigger. Maybe it's they sign the contract and then you create an invoice if you didn't have the proposal contract invoice set up with your proposal. You could just have the workflow create that invoice. Or maybe you have a situation where they've gone through the proposal and contract and original invoice, and at some point later in the workflow, we need to create a second invoice or subsequent invoice. you could have the workflow do it that way. Activate Portal. So this is just taking a step out for you. You don't have to go into your client's project to activate their portal. Usually I'll set this up at the beginning of a workflow for a new client. As soon as they sign their contract and pay their invoice, I'll go ahead and activate their portal. And with it set up in the workflow, I don't have to think about it. I don't have to worry about it. It's just automatically going to activate. You can also deactivate a portal. So if your projects or your services are a very specific time period, and as soon as that period ends, as soon as that job ends, you don't want them to have access to the portal any longer, you can go ahead and have the workflow deactivate that portal on a specific date or based on a specific action in the workflow, and then you don't have to think about it, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to wonder, oh, this project is ended. Did I deactivate the portal or did I not? Did I forget? Do they still have access? You can just set that up to automatically go within the workflow. Pause workflow. So this is going to be a situation where if you've got a workflow that's running and there's something within the process or within the project that you need to do something externally and you don't want the workflow to run while you're working on that or figuring it out, you can set the workflow to automatically pause itself at a certain point, and then you would just come back in and manually reactivate that workflow to run the rest of the steps after whatever it is that's going on. Next we have hold actions until. This is kind of like the pause, except this one will actually reactivate the workflow once the conditions have been met. So you could set this to, as it's going through the workflow, it gets to the step, hold actions until a payment is made, or until a form is completed, or until a specific date, if you wanted to set it with a date. You could set that up as hold all actions until something else happens. Send appointment scheduler. When you set up your scheduler templates, then you can actually send those through the workflow. And this is going to be similar to sending form versus sending email. If you're sending an appointment scheduler, you want to send it using this action and not just send email, because that's going to have the specific options for you to choose which scheduler to send. And when you send it this way, sending it through the workflow, you can actually then trigger other actions based on the appointment that's scheduled with that scheduler. And that's a little more advanced, but we'll get into that when we talk more about actually setting up workflows. Start a workflow. So this is a newer feature that has been added to workflow actions. And you can actually create multiple workflows and have one workflow trigger another workflow. So as you're going through, as you get to different areas or have different things happening in your workflow, you can get to a certain point where now we're going to trigger this other workflow because a payment was made or a form was completed, or just depending on your setup, there's a lot of different ways that you can use that, and it's really helpful to have one workflow be able to trigger another workflow, just depending on, again, what your business is like and what your setup looks like. Archive project. So at the end of a project, or maybe even if you have sent a proposal and it goes unanswered for a while, you could just go ahead and automatically archive the project. Most of the time this is used at the end of actually completing a project, but you can set that up at any point in your workflow, whatever makes sense for actually archiving that project when you no longer want to see it in your main project dashboard. All right, and that's it for today's tidbit, talking about the workflow actions. For more information about receiving updates, requesting future episodes, or getting help with your own Dubsado account, take a look at the links in the description below this video or visit saraleeday.com. Thanks again for watching. Have a good one.